On my 13th birthday, I was supposed to find out how and when I would die. Grace asked, "What do you hope it's gonna be?" Grace laughed, blowing the fluff from a tired head. "I heard the quota's low for accidents this year. Maybe they'll give you an old age." At home, Momma didn't scold my muddy feet. She fed the hens my yellow petals and braided my hair in the dim kitchen light, fingers working like a metronome. Poppa said little. He put on his jacket and left before the ceremony, which was the custom, but not everyone expected him to be one of the three from town on the council. The barn smelled of hay and cold animal breath, of oil and straw, and the damp inside people keep. Elders sat around like slow-moving constellations, their hair long and gray, faces smoothed by years of saying "we" instead of "I." At the front, on hay bales that made them look like thrones, were three townsmen. One of them was my father. Poppa? My voice was a thing I could hardly recognize. The foreman cleared his throat. "Lacey Brewer, a council has convened to determine the manner and timing of your death, in line with the keeping of our community. Would the foreman please approach?" My father stepped forward. Shadows carved along his jaw. He stooped so our eyes met and held out a black flannel charm bag with the slip of paper folded small inside. "I'm so sorry, Lacey," he whispered. The apology landed like wet linen. I unfolded the paper. The letters were cramped, as if the ink didn't want to look at what it named. I felt air leave me the way a wind leaves a field after a storm. Hiccups rose in my throat, and I swallowed them down until they were small and useless. They answered with the same soft pity that people reserve for broken things. "We only control the deaths," one elder said, "not the life between." I curled the paper and slid it into the bag, tied the string, and pulled it over my head. The flannel lay flat against my chest, an early armor. I did not cry in front of the barn. I walked home with the silence of something that has been named and cannot be unnamed. After that day, the town's edges shifted. People smiled differently at me, as if they were counting the months in the spaces between their greeting. Grace still picked dandelions with me, but when we let the seeds go, they seemed to hang longer in the air. Poppa came home late, now spoke in small sentences, and watched my hands when they moved. Momma touched my cheek like a woman feeling for a fever she is afraid to find. Knowledge sat in my body like a stone. Some days I hardened against it and lived like fertilizer-fed grass, greedy for sunlight, kissing boys behind the mill and racing horses until my lungs burned. Other nights, it sat at the foot of my bed like an animal, patient and enormous. I learned my ribs, how they rose and fell, where fear lodged under them. I learned the language of waiting. Years bled into each other. I counted in small, private ways. 365.8. Then 14.1. I learned to read quiet changes in my body, the way my mother read storms. I refused every touch that felt like pity. I accepted kindness as if it were contraband. I wanted to argue with fate the way you argue with someone who has your name in their mouth but not your face. When I was 16, I tore at the seam of the bag in the dark and pulled the paper out by the light of a single candle. The ink had not smudged. Its words were still clean, still flat, like an order stamped and stamped again. I burned it in the hearth and watched the flame lick at the letters like a tongue tasting a name. The ashes were black and warm, and for one night, nothing in the world felt certain. But certainty has a way of creeping back. Small things began to arrange themselves as if under instruction. A cousin's wife died in childbirth when I was 17, an accident the council had decreed, but that still left the family raw. A woman down the road, chosen for a painless drowning, went quietly, and the town's river became a shrine. The quota readouts came like weather reports, indifferent to individual pleas. On the morning I turned 19, the bag felt heavier. Perhaps it had always been heavy, and I finally noticed. Momma pinched my cheek and called me a real woman, like she had the other girls. Poppa could not look me in the eye when he poured my porridge. The town felt like an audience, and I a player who had not yet learned their lines. I sat by the hearth, with the bag knotted tight against my skin, and tried to imagine the shape of what I had been told. It was not monsters or priestly hands. It was the softness of flesh, the quiet chemistry of cells. Pressed my palm to the cloth as if I could feel through it. For a moment, I thought I heard something, a tiny, stubborn thud. Not from the barn or the road, but from inside me. I laughed once, a sound like breaking glass, and then my hand moved without me. It found a small, pebble-hard knot beneath my breast, as if the paper itself had learned to live in meat. Outside, the wind threw dandelion seeds against the window. Grace's laughter drifted from somewhere up the lane, bright and unaware. I pulled the little black bag closer, as if containment could trade for time. I did not scream. There was no bang of revelation, only the slow, intimate recognition of a calendar in my chest. There are many kinds of courage. Mine grew like a bruise, not sudden, but inevitable, purple, turning to a stubborn yellow that could not be washed off. The town will mark the day when the quota is met. Until then, the world is wide with possibility and narrow as a throat.